Hi, welcome to Dissent Dialectics. So I did say in my intro that some of these videos were going to be more conversational in nature. So that's what this one is. I'm just kind of like chilling, relaxing, so I'm not going to be very professional in this one. I don't really care. I was just kind of thinking about things because, as you know, the very few people who have been close to me know, I have a mental illness. Definitely at least one, probably many of them. And I don't mean that in a silly way. I really don't. There is something wrong with me. There's definitely something wrong with me. I think over the years I've grown man enough to at least be able to admit that. And for the past few years I've been through, therapists, psychiatrists, psychopharmacologists. I even did outpatient for like a day or two. And then there's been probably 9 or 10 diagnoses over that period of time. I've gotten, bipolar 1, bipolar 2, borderline, ADHD, major depressive disorder, anxiety, PTSD, and, I have found out that in some ways, a lot of it is a crock. That's not entirely true now. I think there is a science out there. I think that science involves genetics. I think that science involves more towards a spectrum side of things rather than the DSM side of things that we have now. So in the DSM, you kind of have like this binary, or for the programmers, this Boolean value for an illness. Almost. It's do you have it or do you not? Do you have it or do you not? That's it. So bipolar 1, you've got these symptoms, and I don't know, I don't have the DSM because I fucking hate the DSM, but, it says, oh, you have this symptom and these symptoms, and there's 7 symptoms, right? And if you have 5 of these 7 symptoms, you're bipolar. Now we can treat you. Now we can give you this diagnosis. I guess all I really have to say is, what the fuck is that about? Like, that's garbage. That's stupid. And, I guess, what's that saying? The last person in the doctor's class still gets the title of doctor or something like that. Meaning, that person who gets that really awful GPA, the last doctor in the class, he still gets his PhD, he gets his med degree, he gets to go be a doctor. So I'm guessing what that really translates to is a lot of our doctors, especially in the mental health field, because the field itself is so fledgling and so new, I think those doctors just don't know what they're doing. There's also greed. Unfortunately, greed is a huge factor everywhere in our society. It's really terrible. I could go on a whole tangent about greed. We're all greedy. I'm greedy sometimes, but hey, there's the tangent. So I guess what I'm saying is, maybe in some regards, a Boolean approach to identifying mental illness and diagnosing it is okay if you just have to basically train cattle to spit out pills. I don't think training cattle to dispense pills is really what we should be doing. I think that we need very intelligent people, yes, but also very empathetic people. And I would even argue sometimes, some people will roll their eyes, but even more spiritual people. And I don't mean, all this crazy hippie new age snake oil therapy. Although I will say there are some techniques that do have basis in more objective, factual things. I really think what we need is valuing emotional intelligence more. There are different kinds of intelligence. There's IQ, for sure. There's EQ. I'm totally positive an emotional intelligence quotient does exist and is probably not measurable because emotions are not measurable in quite the same way. And I think there's a spiritual intelligence as well. And I'm never going to say you have to believe in a particular God. I'm never going to say, any of that shit. I believe there's a higher power. I think that it is impossible to form an ontological argument against or for God. So it is truly choice. It is truly your choice. And to me, it's just, I don't know, maybe I'm stupid, but I just feel like there's got to be something out there. But anyway, I think those three types of intelligence are important for the mental health field. And I also think that, just straight up intelligence, book smarts, but not just knowledge, wisdom, I think is very important. Like in software engineering, we have the opposite problem. Everybody's always on the bleeding edge. Everybody's like, oh my God, this cutting edge technology, everything's gotta be new. Like we gotta remake our projects every year to make this new technology. Oh, it's gonna be so cool. And then that one dies in a year and then the next one comes along, and I'm guilty of that myself too. I'm a software engineer, hello. But psychology kind of has the opposite. Like only recently have we started getting into things like DBT. Before that, we were strapping people to chairs and shoving things in their face holes and shocking them. And while electroconvulsive therapy can be a spectacular last resort and does have phenomenal results, I mean, it's a little brutish and a little bit outdated, and we're still loving it. We're still eating it up. Maybe it's because it works, maybe it does, but it just sure is brutal when you really think about it. And it can't be good for your body. But anyway, I guess I just see a big problem with diagnoses. So I was watching this talk, and I'm going to be extra unprofessional here, and I'm actually going to go to my YouTube and I'm going to look it up. Dr. Patrick McKeon, Patrick Mckeon. He has a talk on bipolar disorder. It's a lecture from 2014. And like I said, it's on bipolar disorder. And I was watching this because of everything, of the grand cocktail of whatever it is that I have, bipolar seems to be the most prominent and the most likely. And I think that pretty much anyone who's ever met me would agree. I have periods of time where I'm just suddenly irritable as hell. I pick fights with everyone, and it's just gotten worse and worse, and I've lost all my friends, and it's just, it's real. People think I'm being an asshole because I just feel like being an asshole. I'm not. I really desperately do not want to be an asshole, okay? I'm trying. But in this talk, he actually he blended the old with the new, which I guess is something I'm kind of a sucker for in all respects. But here, I think what he did was really genius. And for bipolar, he said, okay, let's look at the old terminology. Manic depressive. Well, what does it mean to be manic? To be manic is to be fast, to be rapid, to be running, 1,000,000 miles a minute. And depressive is to be slowed. You're like a snail, or some other very slow thing, a turtle. I love turtles, right? But see, he worded it much better than me, and you really should just go into YouTube and go to search and look up his thing because it was really, really good. But framing it in this way basically means when you're depressed, your mind is moving very, very slowly. So what that means is we have like this idea of the future, right? We have like a mental picture in our head of what the future is going to be like. But for depressed people, it's like barely there. And whatever is there is basically just saying you can't do this, or this sucks, or you're going to fail. Like this happens on such a minute subconscious level, which is why it drives me insane when people say, oh, just get over it. No, I'd like to think of myself as a relatively intelligent person. I think I have a lot of willpower when I need to have a lot of willpower. I think I'm decently intelligent. I'm certainly no genius, but I can pick something up and I can figure it out if I really put my mind to it. And I am telling you, no, you can't just get over it. You need assistance from a professional. And I guess my point is just mental illnesses exist, and you guys gotta turn your brains on, because if you don't think mental illness exists, I don't know what to tell you. The problem is the industry is very young, and like I said, the doctors. We need the intelligence, but also the emotional, and maybe even just a little pinch of the spiritual as well. We need doctors that think like this guy, this Dr. Patrick McKeon. Sorry, mispronouncing the name, I'm sure. We need more doctors like him, because he goes on with bipolar to describe manic now, and he says he draws a circle on the board and he shows around and around and around and around really, 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 really fast, and the manic brain's going nuts, and it's got a million of these pictures, and they're all great, and it's we want to do all of these things, and oh my god, this is going to be amazing. And then he talks about mixed state bipolar, which has only recently been introduced to the DSM, I believe 5, under the category of bipolar not otherwise specified, which basically is fuck you, I guess. What kind of shitty name is that? Even the fact that it was bipolar 1 or 2, but anyway. And again, the DSM does this thing that it has to do where it's a committee and it's all regulated and it has to be objectively measurable and science and all this stuff that, a lot of times is really great, but here it's just not great, because bipolar disorder is a spectrum. If bipolar disorder were as simple as the DSM makes it out to be, every person with bipolar would act almost exactly the same, exactly, on the most basic of levels that anyone could notice. And no, people don't notice that. There's this stigma, and people don't even know what bipolar is most of the time. They think because you're in one mood one day and one mood the next, you must be bipolar. No, that has nothing to do with bipolar. So this guy goes on to describe mixed episodes as both of those things happening at the same time. So your brain is going very slow and thinking all these negatives about every thought it has, but it's also going fast and spitting out a million thoughts that it's thinking negatively of. If that kind of makes sense. And it's kind of what? How is that possible? How is it doing both of them at the same time? But he goes into detail and he explains it, and it's really, based on this talk alone, I don't like to judge that quickly, but this dude's a genius. Or he read a lot of books by a lot of geniuses and compiled this information, at least. Because this is some really groundbreaking stuff, and I think people don't realize he's thinking, really outside the box. And we have to, because our brains are trying to figure out our brains. And we're treating it like it's a toaster, oh yeah, here's just this thing, let me just pick apart these components and surely I'll figure out how it works, right? And it's no, this isn't a toaster. This is the most complicated mechanism ever in the history of the universe. Well, I guess, I don't know, maybe there was something more complicated, but it's the most complicated thing we know. So please, seriously, can we stop applying these old-ass, outdated methodologies to something that is so much more subjective? We need more patient-focused treatments. We need medication, but we need to make it not a pseudoscience anymore. We need to look at genetics, and it's kind of it's backwards almost. The psychology side, which was all half of it was started by Freud anyway. It was a total fucking hack, and they found out all his Oedipus complex stuff was because he wanted to screw his own sister. But anyway, that's totally besides the point. Where was I? So it's almost backwards. Psychology they're trying to apply all this science, and then psychiatry, they're trying to apply all this subjectivity, and they like mix it with what seems like objectivity by just asking you a bunch of questions and shipping you out the door. And it's like, what are you doing? It needs to switch. Psychiatry, that is, the medication, and psychopharmacology and genetics testing and stuff like that need to be taking the stride forward when it comes to technology. And then let the thinkers, let the more artistic, emotional people kind of work on the psychology side of things with stuff like DBT, which is phenomenal. We need more things like DBT. That has helped a lot of people, a whole lot. And let them be over there. And then the really, really good people who have the intelligence and the emotional intelligence and empathy, let them be in the middle and let them hybrid, make this chimera of both of those fields. And that's how we're going to start normalizing. I don't want to say normalizing, but just people will start understanding mental illness for what it is and actually being able to take steps to accept people in society. And I don't mean the kind where I'm whining because I want my hand held. No, I want to live the same life as anyone else. I want the ups, I want the downs, I want all of that. I just don't want to not have any control over my own brain anymore. And I really don't think that's too much to ask. So, I guess that's the end of my little rant. There was no real topic. I guess the general topic was mental health. So I'll just call it mental health or something. But this is Dissent Dialectics, and I guess I will see you next time.